This is Spectrum.
Alternative medicine, homeopathy, secret society, hypnosis, the paranormal, alternative energy, UFO, abduction, the weird, the wild, and the wonderful.
With your hosts, Tom Theophanis and Scott Jordan.
Hello, good evening, and welcome to the Spectrum Radio Network on BBS Radio 2. I'm Scott Jordan here, my co-host, Tom Theophanis. And remember, there's no such thing as too much information. Hey, Tom, how you doing, buddy?
Hey, Scott, how you doing, man?
I'm doing good.
Well, tonight we have a great guest. Good. Tonight's guest is Victor Viggiani. He has a Bachelor of Arts degree in Sociology and Psychology and a Master's in Educational Administration and Curricular Development out of Brock University in St. Catharines, Ontario. He serves as a Faculty of Education Advisor at Medellin College in Buffalo, New York. Victor utilizes his extensive speaking and leadership skills to advance the exposure of classified and declassified government UFO documents to engage mainstream media in the public and in the political imperatives and implications of the full acknowledgement and disclosure by government of the ET UFO presence now engaging the planet. He is now a radio journalist in Toronto, Canada, and he produces audio material, interviews experts on the UFO phenomenon, and is a presenter at conferences and private speaking engagements. He has appeared on television and radio in Australia, United States, and Canada. Welcome, Victor. How are you?
Just fine, and thank you. That's quite an introduction. I just wondered who you were talking about there for a moment.
Hey, okay, Victor, now that we know about your history, maybe you could fill in any details that we don't know. How did, what's a brief outline of where you've been in this industry, and before that, what got you interested?
Well, initially back in 1975, I believe it was, while I was teaching school, within my first couple of years within education, I read a book by Jacques Vallée. I believe the book was called Revelations at the time. And I don't exactly remember why I picked the book up to read it, but I did and found it absolutely fascinating. Jacques Vallée, as you both probably know, is one of the traditional fathers of ufology way back, beginning, I guess, a lot of investigation on his own. And after reading that book, I became engrossed with different kinds of material. And from that point on, I read just about anything and everything that I could get my hands on about the phenomenon. From that point of view, I guess I launched a bit of an interest in it, and looking at sighting reports and talking to people who had seen UFOs and trying to get their understanding as to what these things were, what they looked like, and how many sightings there were per year. All of that kind of information it did fascinate me. However, I eventually moved into another realm of this investigation after probably about 15 or 20 years involvement. I got very heavily involved, not necessarily in just sighting reports and in investigating sightings and talking to people who have seen UFOs. I got into the political aspects of what this phenomenon means geopolitically within the planet and the substructure of government and the cover-up and the kinds of things that we have to do in order to bring this thing forward, and involve myself with the media, and just an attempt to have people generally recognize that the UFO phenomenon, first, is real, and second of all, that we are in fact being engaged by off-world civilizations, and third of all, why the cover-up? What's going on? What are the reasons why the government does not want to talk about this, and why does the government's silence exist to the depth that it does?
Working in this field in Canada, I would assume that you met Tom early on in your research.
That's right. Yeah, I forget exactly, Tom, what point you and I hooked up, but I do remember putting an ad in the Toronto Star, I believe, and Tom picked up on it and gave me a call, and we got together and we did some sightings investigations, and we I guess got together with Errol Bruce Knapp and did a whole lot of things with MUFON at the time. Did some presentations over there on St. Clair and Avenue Road. We did that for many years, didn't we, Tom?
Yep. I used to go.
And,
For sure.
yeah, and
Quite a while.
yeah, and we did a lot of work in that direction.
I remember you, Victor.
Yeah, and doing some presentations there brought me, I guess, the to the point of saying to myself, listen, there's something more going on here than just lights in the sky. And I began to realize that there's a whole lot more to this than lights in the sky. It's about the lies on the ground that I'm involved with now, and the way the government is in fact lying to the public about its involvement with the UFO issue and the extraterrestrial presence. That more than anything compels me to work within this area and develop an understanding among the citizens that I work with, and also to the media. That's a big job all in itself.
Yeah.
Working.
So
with,
there was an evolution in your own understanding of the field. Working in Canada, and then working in the radio field as well, with a bunch of people. Tom, do you have any questions?
Certainly. So, Victor, you also are director of Z-Line Communications. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, Z-Line Communications is a news network that I established probably now, I think it's going on we're into our 7th year with Z-Line Communications. And basically, Z-Line Communications is a worldwide news network. If you want to Google it, all you have to do is just type in Z-Land Communications, ZLAND, and Communications. If you want to Google that, you'll come up with our website. And basically what it is, it's a conduit through which we look at events within the disclosure movement. Basically, it deals with disclosure and how the media deals with it. And as soon as we get a major event that we feel is significant within the realm of the media, we develop press releases, and we send the press releases out to approximately 1,400 news agencies throughout the world. It's an international organization that disseminates information about the UFO disclosure movement. And we do that on a regular basis. If people want to become part of that, they can become part of the database. And not only would the news agencies receive the information that we're sending about the disclosure movement, but also they would receive the information themselves as far as information is concerned. So, for example, right now we're following quite a few different things. We're following the premiere of the UFO disclosure program that Richard Serrett and I have put together. It premiered February the 18th. The Conspiracy Show with Richard Serrett is now on television, and he's got probably, I think around 14 episodes already completely in the can and ready to go. And another issue that we're following is the nuclear missile shutdowns that occurred at Malmstrom Air Force Base back in 1967, along with the other 6 military officers who had their own experiences right up to the present time. And we all know that that situation is a pretty desperate situation, because it has a whole lot to do with the cascading effects on national security within the United States, and having media recognize that these missile shutdowns are in fact a threat to national security, but they will not talk about it, and they refuse to air the information that that these press officers, these actually military officers, have put forward. So we feel it's a very important component of looking at what the UFO issue is all about with respect to national security.
Okay, well, let's drill down. For those people who are listening who aren't aware of what you're talking about with the missile silos, maybe we can drill down on that a bit, and you can give us a rundown of what the events were and how they occurred.
Well, there's a series of events. If you have a look at what the documents really tell us, we've got 7 specific documents, affidavits. They're signed, notarized affidavits by 7 military officers, all of whom, at the time when it happened to them, they didn't know each other. They really had no idea who they were way back in 1967 and through the 60s, 70s, and into the 80s when these events did occur. Basically, the first one that's on record is the one that occurred at Malmstrom Air Force Base, where Captain Robert Salas was the launch commander at the time. And what happened to him was he was in his missile silo on or about the middle of March of 1967, and he received a telephone call from one of his topside security team officers. He's 60 feet down below in a bunker, watching all of the I guess the panels where all of the nuclear missiles are showing green and ready to go. All these missiles are always on standby, ready and on alert, ready to be launched at a moment's notice, depending on who gives them the signal to launch them. So they're all in a ready position. And he's 60 feet below, and he receives a telephone call from his topside security people and saying, "My goodness, there's this red glowing object out here. It's hovering over the perimeter of the gate. What the heck are we going to do?" And these men are usually very, very circumspect, very calm individuals. But Robert Salas, in my interviews with him, and I've interviewed him at least 4 times and spoke with him, personally, he said these men were very, very agitated to the point of almost wanting to run away. As a matter of fact, one of the men, in fact, did attempt to climb the fence, and he was injured in an attempt to get away. So they see this huge red glowing light hovering over the nuclear installation, and you have to remember this is a huge installation that covers miles, maybe 10 or 15 square miles. It's a huge installation, and during the period of time when the object was hovering, not a whole lot was going on. But when the thing did leave, Robert Salas and his commanding officer noticed that 10 of the nuclear missiles went down in sequence and in random, and they were shut off. Basically, they went to what Robert calls as a no-go situation. They tried to restart them. They had no success in doing so, and in effect, a huge number of nuclear missiles within the United States arsenal, of which there are literally hundreds or thousands of missiles, were shut down by an object of unknown origin. We feel, and Robert feels, that it was in fact a UFO. The men that he got the call from said that it was a UFO, and they reported this, and they made sure that the people in their command structure knew about it, and they were told that not to talk about it, to be quiet about it, and that this was something that they did not need to speak to anyone about. So we know that not only did this incident occur, in fact occurred, we have proof that an object of unknown origin was in fact responsible for sending some type of electromagnetic signal or ray or whatever it might have been to cause these missiles to shut down and to go into a no-go situation. So that's basically a very brief thumbnail sketch of what happened that night. And then I guess what happened after that is different individuals. Dwayne Arneson, one of the individuals who was reported to have been involved in repairing these things. He was involved in that. Which is Nelson Jameson, another officer who witnessed the shutdown of his missiles. Charles Halt, who you probably all are familiar with in the UK, he was at the Rendlesham Forest incident. He experienced that and actually saw a UFO hover 2 or 3 feet off the ground and actually make a landing and hover through the trees and forests in the Rendlesham Forest. So there's a number of these officers, former military officers, who were involved directly with these UFOs that hovered over nuclear installations. In some instances, they just hovered over the installation and made their presence felt. They really didn't shut down missiles in each case, but they were, in fact, drawn to nuclear installations and made their presence felt at that time.
What's the new thing happening with WikiLeaks now and some of the information coming out of him?
Well,
during this time?
There's a whole lot built up about that, Tom. The WikiLeaks thing, as far as we're concerned, might be very similar to the files that were what we call dumped onto the scene by Brazil and France and the UK and Denmark. There have been about 4 or 5 nations who have performed what we call a dump of information, basically UFO files that have been put into the public domain by military or the government themselves. And basically, these files are, in my opinion, virtually non-entities. They're just a cover-up for what's really going on. And I think particularly in the case of the United Kingdom, they dumped these files into the public domain, hoping to satisfy this huge hunger that the public has about the UFO phenomenon. And in a way, that kind of thing, as far as we're concerned in the disclosure movement, it really wasn't very successful. Basically, if you've read any of the files, and I've gone through, I know the Canadian government has about 7,500 files that they've put on to their Library and Archives Canada. And if you look through, I've gone over through about 2,500 of these files, and it's very similar to reading the telephone book. There's really nothing of any real gravitas within these things. They're basically sighting reports by people. Uncle Fred one night, calls the Royal Canadian Air Force saying that he saw, a red light over his barn, and that's about it. There's no investigation. There's no intense questioning of the individuals. Yeah. There's nothing that goes on about it. So the thing is filed probably with the University of Manitoba, and it just sits there and nothing happens with it. And these 7,000 files, as far as we're concerned, from the Canadian government, are non-entities. They're just basic telephone book information, as I call it. However, I must say that in reviewing some of the files, we do have information that the Canadian government back in the 1950s, along with the United States government, entered into quite a few discussions about what to do about the UFO phenomenon. And I have several of those documents on the Zealand Communications website that talk about the Canadian government developing, along with the United States government, a manner in which to handle information coming to them about UFOs. And basically, the Canadian government took the position that when they did handle UFO reports, the media and internal sources within the Canadian government and military were told to, quote unquote, play down UFOs in order to not exacerbate interest among the general public. So they did everything they could to receive the reports, but they did nothing with them. And that's very clear in all of the memos that the United States Air Force and the Royal Canadian Air Force at the time were very entrenched in not doing or saying anything public about the UFO sightings in order not to develop more and more interest in it. And the memo states it quite clearly. There's just no doubt about it. It's signed by a military person, and it's dated, and it's marked top secret. And so those kinds of documents in the files of the Canadian government, anyways, show that not only are UFOs real within the government, bureaucracy, that we know for a fact that the Canadian and American governments have entered into dialogue and discourse and discussions about what to do about the UFO phenomenon. And it in a way, it does indicate that they're just as confused as we are about what this phenomenon is. And it also proves, too, Tom, that they scramble jets on a regular basis. Yeah. So I've received 117 pages from the Department of National Defense indicating that that 3 F-16s were scrambled back in 2001, very recently, to chase 3 UFOs that emerged over coming out of Alaska. And not only did these 3 F-16s track this thing, we have tracking reports that indicate a medical evacuation jet also saw exactly the same 3 UFOs at the same time as the F-16s did. So we know that the Canadian government is engaging in this. We know that they have information about it, but they make absolutely no comment at all publicly about their radar trackings or the information that they're in possession of. And we can go on for another hour about that kind of information. As a matter of fact, I spoke to people in NORAD just recently, recently as September of this past year, about their operations, and they fully admitted to me that they were aware of these kinds of things, but they didn't know what to do about it. But then again, when you get NORAD speaking about that kind of thing, that kind of stuff does not rise to the surface, and it's not made public knowledge. And even if it does, they deny it.
And how willing are they to say that to you on camera or in a recording that can be publicly displayed?
They would never do it.
Not happen.
No, it wouldn't happen. The closest that I got to them admitting to these things was that they do track unknowns. That's basically the extent to which they will admit that they do interact with these things. They call them unknown targets, or they call them unknowns, and they do admit that they do track unknowns. But that's as far as they go to admit that these things are crafted.
That sounds a little bit like a cover your ass statement.
Of course, there's no doubt about it. It's not in their interest to say anything, because if they did, myself and a lot of other news agencies and people within the research community would be all over them like a dirty shirt, trying to get them to admit or at least repeat what they did say. Now, that kind of information does not rise to the surface, because we know the CIA. Then there are memos to this effect too. If you take a look closely at some of the CIA memos that have come out in the 60s, they have a concerted policy, a very well articulated policy about what to do when the media becomes involved in this. The media can talk about them. The media can, say there was a UFO over Wisconsin or something like that. There's no problem with that at all. But they will not at all be allowed to raise these questions. Let's suppose at a news conference where the President of the United States is making any kind of announcement. There is no way that anyone in the press gallery or the press audience at a United States presidential press conference would be allowed to ask a question about UFOs. So, and it's amazing that that kind of control is more than evident within the bureaucracy and the press contacts and the press corps in Washington D.C. They can ask any other question they want about national security, but thou shalt not talk about UFOs at press conferences. So as far as NORAD's concerned, or even NATO or any of those organizations, it's quite clear that there is a very tight lid on all of this information. And not only is it a tight lid from anything getting out, the government is silent about this. They say nothing about it. It's not just covering it up. They will not articulate. They will not have any kind of announcement of policy regarding their take on UFOs. Although we know quite well behind the scenes, this stuff is talked about at the highest levels of governance in the world. We know for a fact Pentagon people talk about it. You can't tell me that 10 missiles get shut down and people in the Pentagon don't know about it. The Pentagon knows about this
right.
information. So it's
also, Obama was asked flat out about UFOs, and he said he dodged it. He sidestepped that like the true politician he is, and he didn't even give a yes/no answer. He just completely dodged it with a political maneuver. It was amazing.
Yeah, it's very careful, and most other presidents have done that. We know that in spite of the fact that Bill Clinton was very involved and very interested in trying to find out about the UFO phenomenon, we know this for a fact, that Bill Clinton went out of his way to attempt to get information about the UFO phenomenon, and he was shut down. We know that Jimmy Carter was instrumental in attempting to try to get information out of the former CIA director, George W. Bush Sr. As a matter of fact, the information that we have on good authority from several sources is that, in fact, Jimmy Carter did go to the CIA, went face-to-face with George W. Bush. I'm not sure if you're aware of this or not, but he did ask George Bush for the UFO file. And he said, I want all the information.
He asked Papa Bush, didn't he?
That's right, George W. Bush Sr.
Yeah.
That's right. And at the time, he confronted Bush at the time, and the response by the CIA director at the time, George W. Bush Sr., was that, no, Mr. President, you do not have a need to know, and you're not getting any information about UFOs from us. So that kind of information does not seem to float in the media. And if you do bring it forward to them, they just disregard it. And I brought it forward on many interview shows that I've been on before. And you get a lot of furrowed brows. And they attempt to air it, but the big news programs like 60 Minutes or Dateline, you'll never see this information on Good Morning America.
And if you do hear it, then what you're going to hear is a lot of the giggle factor thrown in and the ridicule. They'll say it in a snide voice and ridicule it.
Yeah, that's the overt policy that this that this stuff, as long as that kind of mindset, Scott, is perpetuated, it doesn't matter what kind of information you bring forward. It will not mean anything, because you'll always get that sort of raised eyebrow, a little snicker in the background, and people have almost become conditioned to receive that kind of information. It becomes a psychological ploy a lot.
That's exactly what it is. Bang on. They know what they're doing. People trained in the media know exactly how to say things in such a way as to put a light on them and convince you to look at it the way they're saying it.
Precisely.
And they're master manipulators.
Yeah. What I must say, though, what I must admit, if we compare right now, let's go back. Let's go back 8 years, for example. You would not see 8 years ago some of the really intense media coverage that this thing is getting, in a way that is almost. I describe it as a glass ceiling. And there's a glass ceiling up there, and the UFO issue is rising above the surface. Like, let's take, for example, CNN's coverage as far as Larry King is concerned. Larry King has covered the Stephenville lights. He's covered the Washington press conference regarding the nuclear missile shutdowns and several other aspects of the UFO phenomena. James Fox has been on there several times talking to different individuals, along with Larry King. That kind of coverage would have been almost unheard of 10 years ago. So we've got a news organization like CNN who's bringing this to the forefront, and things like this are gradually seeping out. The Peter Jennings special several years ago would have been unheard of. 10 years ago.
And this is officially sanctioned. Larry King isn't a rogue reporter. He's the go-to guy when you want stuff put out in official capacity. Trust me, he's allowed to say what he's saying, and he's done so with permission.
Yeah, that's true. He will let it out. It's almost like letting the pressure out of a balloon. You just let the pressure off for a little while, and it sort of deflects any interest that's going on. But you can bet your dollars to donuts that this information, if it arrives on the television screen, and Larry King has done it, you can be sure that it won't be the information the next morning on the on NBC News or CBS 60 Minutes that next Sunday. They will not cover this information, and you will not, as I said earlier in the program, you will not get people asking questions at a press conference. Mr. President, yesterday on CNN, Larry King reported that there was a UFO that was tracked by radar in Stephenville, Texas, and moved towards the Bush Ranch. Do you have any comment on that? That's what you'll get. Or you'll get a real nice dodge on the part of the president. Yeah. And first of all, the question wouldn't be allowed. So that's what I mean by the glass ceiling. There is a very, very thick glass ceiling above this, and the information is only allowed to rise so far before it hits that glass ceiling and doesn't go any further. Now, once again, the caveat is I think the glass ceiling is becoming a little bit more permeated by this information. We're moving the ladder up a bit. We're moving the rungs up in the ladder a bit by bit, and disclosure is becoming a little bit more prevalent internationally, and you can see that. So it's something that we're making strides with, but still we're not where we need to be in terms of the global realization that we are being engaged by off-world civilizations. And if you want to talk about fossil fuels, that's probably one of the reasons why they're not letting this information out. The fossil fuel aspect of this is probably, as far as I'm concerned, the key component in the cover-up. Because if we do,
it's one of the biggies,
that to me is the key component of it.
How is the exopolitics movement right now dealt with in Europe, for instance?
Actually, Tom, the exopolitics movement is growing like wildfire. We have, the last count I had, there was 34 different international organizations throughout the world. Exopolitics Denmark, Exopolitics South Africa, Exopolitics France, Exopolitics Canada, Denmark, Sweden. Is really growing, and there's a fellow in Germany and in Denmark two fellows actually who are just taking this to the hill and really making some real good inroads in educating people. That to me is probably the most effective tool that most of these organizations are using today. They're attempting the movement towards disclosure, and as we all know, that's very, very difficult. Disclosure we define as the acknowledgement by government of the UFO phenomenon. In other words, the public admission that something is going on in our skies that we don't know about. What's happening in exopolitics is that we're moving the bar up, as I said earlier, regarding disclosure. We're getting closer and closer all the time. But what these exopolitics organizations are doing is educating their constituents to the phenomenon of UFOs. And they're getting lots of people involved in this. It's becoming a very strong grassroots movement, and more people publicly are knowing about UFOs throughout the whole world. So that's one of the really good benefits of exopolitics. Now, some of the positions that some of the exopolitical people take may be suspect, may be criticized a little bit in the general public, and I can understand that criticism because some of the perspectives that the exopoliticians within the exopolitical movement take are a little bit extreme, a little bit speculative, and I will be the first one to admit that.
Are there any examples of that? I mean,
I don't want to get
talking
into
about Greer.
No. Stephen Greer, no, he's not really part of that exopolitical type of thing. When you start talking about personalities, I try to back off on that, Scott, because I don't like criticizing people, because each of us in this field have our own perspectives, and some people tend to go out on limbs a little bit further than others, because we have to admit that this whole field of UFO investigation is marginal at best. Even those of us who feel that we're relatively conservative within the field of UFOs, you take a look at our position relative to someone in the general public who knows nothing about it or has no opinion on it. We are way out there. We are on the margin. We are the marginal individuals. We are the ones that are the wackos, as far as they're concerned. So it's a relative thing.
So within this larger group, you'll have varying degrees of perspectives and personality. I get that. The only reason I said Greer is because I was probably thinking of your earlier comments on disclosure, so I associated that. I'm sorry about that.
Yeah. Well, not really. And Stephen, I know Stephen quite well. I mean, Stephen and I communicate regularly about different issues. Because I feel that he has some very, very valuable perspectives on this, because he's one of the first ones within the disclosure movement who stuck his neck out at the press conference in 2001 and brought forward at the press conference itself about 20 people who were specifically involved themselves in the cover-up and decided to come forward. And he did a fantastic job, and we cannot criticize him for doing that. But recently, I think Stephen, many people feel, has done things that a lot of people within the UFO community don't understand. He's moved into different areas as far as free energy is concerned, and that's what he does, and we can't criticize it. He has moved the disclosure movement ahead leaps and bounds, despite the criticisms of many people. And Stephen is the first one to admit that he'll take any kind of abuse as long as he feels that this whole movement is moving forward.
Right. So do you think all aliens are positive?
No, I don't for a second think that that's the case. We know that the way the alien sort of agenda works is, and through some of the sources that we have, I'm not sure if you're familiar with the work of Stan Fulham. In the book Challenges of Change, Stan is very specific, and how he gets his information is probably another program altogether. He and several other individuals, they're putting forward information that the galaxy is filled with all kinds of different life, and some of them not so nice, and some of them benevolent. And I guess what it all boils down to is that the ones that are benevolent and the ones that are not so benevolent have a bit of a standoff going on. And if, in fact, the entire ET community were these sort of kinds of individuals that come down and have us for dinner, they'd have done it long ago. And they're not just sitting back waiting for us to sort of capitulate and give up the planet. before they come in. They could do it tomorrow if they wanted to. But there are, I think, agencies within the UFO or the extraterrestrial community that balance this kind of perspectives off and decide that, well, let's just leave Earth alone for now, and we'll just sort of manage it in the way we manage it. Because I'm firmly of the opinion that we have no idea what the alien agenda is. We don't have a clue what it's all about. Now, there may be some people in the military that have made contact that might know what's going on, but even they don't know the full agenda of what the entire community of extraterrestrials have up their sleeve. And that's what disclosure is all about, is finding out what the government knows, getting them to acknowledge it and come forward and to admit that this human community that we have, we're no longer adolescents. We're not children. We can handle the information. They think that if the information does come out, the world would be in huge panic. I completely disagree with that. Now, it will be unsettling. There will be a degree of paradigm shifts going on with different kinds of perspectives, but eventually this truth has to come out. It cannot remain hidden for the next 60 years again. So it's high time that we understand that although we don't understand the alien agenda and who they might be, the fact that it's hidden is as far as I'm concerned, a crime. It is a crime against humanity. And we have to get the information out, good or bad.
Go ahead, Tom.
How was the conference in Spain there? How was it accepted?
It was
the one that they had.
Was it about a year and a half ago? Yeah, I followed the conference in Barcelona. I didn't follow it daily. It was on a continuing live stream for most of the day, just not every day, but for most days. And I followed it, and I was very, very impressed by several presentations, most of which myself was impressed by the presentation of Robert O'Dean, the former NATO officer, who told some just literally spine-chilling stories about his experiences with NATO and tracking literally flocks of UFOs as they moved over Europe. A lot of great information came out of that, and not just information, Tom. What came out of it was this new awareness, public awareness of what this information was all about. And it gets to the point where you can only talk about UFOs for so long. You can only talk about sighting reports for so long before it becomes a little repetitive, and it becomes very kind of hackneyed after a while. You can only talk about, well, we saw 15 UFOs, or did we see 5 UFOs? Well, it really doesn't matter how many UFOs you see. In the exopolitical realm and disclosure realm, the meat and potatoes of this issue is what does it mean geopolitically to our governments? And I think Spain really moved the whole bar a little bit further up the ladder in allowing this information to come out in a credible way. We're seeing a real phenomenon happen here. We're seeing very well-educated people, high-level military individuals coming forward that have total credibility and exhorting the media to look at this information. That, as far as I'm concerned, is the key component of the disclosure movement, and not just the sort of mundane sighting reports that perhaps agencies like MUFON, and they've got their own problems right now too, but I don't want to talk about that. That MUFON does. Right, yeah. It's you can count UFOs for till the cows come home, but the fact of the matter is that the meaning of it is much more important than the actual sighting report. So I think Spain went a good distance in making the UFO phenomenon a little bit more palatable, a little bit more understandable, a little bit more relative and relevant to most individuals, and people who didn't really have an opinion about UFOs are moving forward to make the conclusion, hey, you know what, something just might be going on, because I heard a former NATO officer say this, that, and the other thing about his experiences. And it doesn't always have to...
Was that Bob Dean at...
That's right. Yeah, Robert
during
O'Dean,
the Barcelona... Yeah. When he got up there and he talked about the human race's destiny is in space.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And, okay.
Yeah. If anyone does want to listen to his presentation, all they have to do is just Google, Spain, Barcelona, and Robert O'Dean, and they can go to the YouTube presentation, and it is one of the best presentations I have ever heard in my life.
Yeah,
This
he
man,
was he was getting a lot of congratulations for that one.
Yeah.
He showed pictures of a base on Mars. He showed pictures of UFOs that were 5 miles long. At the end of his discussion, another gentleman came up. God, if I can remember his name.
I wish I could help you. I'm sorry, Scott.
And, well, another gentleman came up on stage with him and said he had worked on Mars.
Yeah,
I should know his name. I can't remember his name. Do you know what I'm talking about? The guy got up on stage and he says, "Oh, he can confirm everything that Bob Dean's saying because not only are there pictures of the base on Mars, he's worked there."
Yeah. You talking about Basaggio?
No.
No. Okay. No. Then I'm sorry. I can't recollect.
He was that Project Camelot whistleblower.
Oh, I see. Okay. But I guess the point you're making is that some of the information that's coming out is pretty scary. It's pretty scary. It's a very, very way out there, and I guess the bottom line is that we have to keep.
Sorry, Victor.
No, go ahead.
Sorry, I was going to say, how is the European media treating the subject right now, and compared to the American, North American?
I'm not quite sure about. I know France and Germany are probably France, Germany, and Denmark. Those media, especially Germany, they seem to be a lot more open to reporting not just UFO sightings, as I said earlier, but a little bit more information about the disclosure of all this stuff. They seem to be leading the way in Germany. And in listening to some people within the European theater on this, we are of the opinion that if disclosure, or at least acknowledgement by government, is going to happen, it could very well come out of Germany, because the people that are working in the exopolitical realm there have a very good handle on internal media workings. And we know that the United States could be the big kingpin in the disclosure movement, but they have a whole lot more to lose if they do disclose. So internationally, Germany seems to be at the forefront of the potential, anyways, of disclosure coming out of Germany, because the media there is a little bit more open to it. As a matter of fact, it's a lot more open to it. The UK media is another media that's very, very open. The Guardian in the United Kingdom, the organization called the Mail, they constantly are talking about it. Constant reports about UFO phenomenon and the geopolitical implications of it. So it's really something that's moving forward. And the Huffington Post in the United States is a good supporter of the UFO phenomenon, but not nearly as entrenched as the UK and the German media. So it once again, it's moving forward a little bit at a time, and it's unfortunate that it's that way, but that's just the way media works. Media works very, very slowly, and within media, especially within the United States.
Now,
I remembered the name of the guy, by the way. It was Henry Deacon.
There you go.
That's a pseudonym he uses.
Yeah.
Now, you were in Australia recently doing some work over there. Tell us how.
Yeah, twice. Twice actually. Just recently, last year, my wife and I went down to Australia for April, May, and June of 2010. But before that, we spent a full year in Australia in 2003. It was a teaching exchange opportunity that my wife had, and the two of us went down there together. And while we were there, we traveled around. We traveled the entire continent. But during the whole period of time, I got to know quite a few people within the UFO movement within Australia. Spoke at conferences in Sydney, Australia, in Brisbane, and in Adelaide, and just got on the radio a number of times because the media down there is incredibly open about this. They don't have too many qualms about talking about it. You don't get the same kind of repression or the same kind of giggle factor that you do up here. So they're very open to it. They have a lot of great organizations in Sydney There's a tremendous group of people down there who I still maintain contact with. Diane Harrison in Brisbane, Australia, who runs a great organization. And they're very interested. They have a great following. They have regular meetings, especially in Brisbane and Sydney. An individual, Keith Basterfield, in Adelaide, he has unearthed some really great Australian UFO files. He and his colleagues have worked on bushels full of documents down there, and I helped them ferret through some of them while I was down there. So there's a great feeling about the UFO movement, the disclosure movement, and as a matter of fact, the conference that I spoke at in Brisbane in 2003. Oh gosh, who was there? There's a number of people. Dr. Lear was there. Who else? Travis Walton spoke at the conference. The fellow who heads the Nexus magazine at Woods, I forget his first name. A lot of real high-profile people at the conference, and they spoke about the different aspects of ufology. But I was the only one at the time who spoke about disclosure, and I spoke for about an hour and a half. And it really kind of hit them hard, and a little bit. Some of them really didn't react as I may have thought they might have. They were very, very skeptical about the idea of disclosure. They were sort of into the realm of just counting UFOs and looking at what they look like, and that kind of thing.
By that, do you mean that they were skeptical that it was possible for disclosure to happen, or?
No, disclosure and why? What's the idea behind all of that? What I think a lot of the individuals who did raise that issue, they didn't understand. This really kind of surprised me. They didn't understand the geopolitical implications of what UFOs really meant. That's the kind of transition that I went through back in the I guess the late 70s. You get, like, as I said, I'll repeat myself again, but you get to a point where, counting UFOs and what they look, are they cylindrical? Are they triangular? Are they made of metal? Are they made of lights? That you can only go so far with that stuff. And, we had 475 sightings in the month of January, and it's gonna go up to, twice that in May. And, that's all nice information. You can ruminate over that information for as long as you want. But there reaches a point where the logical extension of all of that information is the geopolitical implications of what these things are, where they're from, why they're here, and why the heck is the government hiding the information. And I think that's what they found hard to accept, that there was a geopolitical and policy implications to do with the government and military regarding UFOs. They didn't make the connection as far as I was concerned. And I brought that out very, very heavily, and I got a lot of criticism for it. But then again, once I raised the issue of fossil fuels and the idea of the kinds of energy that these things use, and once I mentioned that in the discussions afterwards to a lot of individuals, they get, oh my goodness, you could be right. I asked the question, how do these things move? What do they do? Like how do are they moving interdimensionally? Are they moving at or beyond the speed of light? They're not using fossil. They're not filling their tanks up on their home planet with gasoline and getting here that way.
Yeah. Well, maybe why that's Earth is so popular. They come here for gas.
You know what? I never thought of that. My goodness, that's a great. Wow, maybe that's attracting them.
Travel billions of miles just to come to Earth to get some gas. Probably some oil. Change the oil filter.
Maybe that's why sightings have gone down over the past couple of weeks, is because the price of gas has gone up.
Yeah, they said, "Fuck it, they're going."
The price of gas is up now. That's why
we're going to another planet. These guys milking us.
But
so
anyways,
Victor, we've been getting a lot of good reports out of China too now recently, hasn't it?
Oh yeah. The Chinese people are all over this. The organizational, I guess, thing over there, the organizational structure really isn't as strong as it could be. But there are several groups over there that who is Neil Gould, who's one of the exopoliticians in Exopolitics. China, he's He's an Aussie by background, but he runs a tremendous organization over there. And the number of UFO sightings over there are on the increase. Now, maybe they're on the increase because more information is being allowed to be let out about it. Maybe the sightings were as high as they've always been in the past, but it just never got out. So I think that the kinds of UFO sightings in China and some of the, although I don't like to rely too heavily on video, because the video thing can be made up as easily as anybody can move